But as far as Dirk's team, I mean, their car is ideal. I mean, that's what Lemon's races are won with, are the that model BMW.
Well, it turned out we found the car like a week before we signed up.
Nice.
Which didn't have a drive shaft, didn't have an exhaust or a hood. It just didn't drive, but at the time it seemed like a good idea. We were crazy enough to just sign up for it, and we thought, I don't know what we thought.
Driving Dirk's car, he's got a stick, and you're in the right gear when you need it. Whereas with the automatic, even though you can go down to second and then shift up to third, there's a pause. It really comes down to the gear ratios for the car.
That thing almost knew what you wanted it to do, and it didn't. I mean, I could have that thing in a four-wheel drift going around some of the wide sweeping corners. It was amazing, just the way that you could give it input on the steering wheel and it would turn that into winning output.
I drove the Camaro, I loved it. I loved it. It was just like a 10, you know? What I loved about it is how low it was. You know, you could look up on the other guys and go through the turn like that. And then the other thing, of course, you come out of the turn, you just floor it. And as long as the tire wouldn't spin up in the air, you get some real good kick.
The initial condition of the Camaro when we first got it was absolutely terrible.
Yeah, it had been sitting underneath a tree behind the trailer house where, yeah, it had been sitting outside for a while.
No transmission. The drive shaft was in the back. 84 Camaro Berlinetta.
It kind of fired a couple times, but it really wouldn't start.
There were some freeze plugs that were broken. It looked like one of the main seals had given way. I mean, there was just water leaking out, oil leaking out. The exhaust wasn't even on right. This thing was going to need a lot of work.
And we couldn't really get it going, so we started troubleshooting it and found out the distributor, because there was no transmission, the whole engine was rocked back.
Had a 305, which after we took it out, turned out the front camshaft drivetrain was like chewing through the cover. There were probably 3 cylinders that were not firing, or the rings were completely busted.
We were more afraid of putting that engine back together again than we were of taking an engine out in Tom's backyard, rebuilding that one and putting that one in the Camaro.
Yeah, so at that point we decided we better pull the 350 apart to see if it's in any better shape or not.
I mean, they were both pretty bad, I think. And I think we ended up just saying, well, they're both pretty bad. The 350 will at least give us some more power if we get it running, so let's concentrate on that. And I think, I might be wrong, but I think that a lot of the parts are the same for the 305 versus the 350, so we were able to still swap some parts out.
By the 4th Wednesday, I think we had decided that we were going to go with 350 and just rebuild it, because the 305 was hosed.
The 350, there's a long story there.
We had a 350 that Tom had out in his backyard, and we stripped that all down.
We had pulled it out of the Blazer and it was just sitting in the corner. The engine was there, the transmission was actually out of a different vehicle. That came out of an 82 El Camino. So that came out of one vehicle, the engine out of another vehicle, and it was all sitting in the corner. It was just waiting for a Camaro to come along.
Refinished it, blew it all out, sanded it down, and we put it back together.
We were being pretty technical too, you know. We got all the tolerances right on around the main bearings and stuff, all that stuff, the crank.
The first thing we saw was all the lifters were pretty well stuck. It had been gummed up and been sitting there for a long time, so they were all pretty well gummed out. So we started pulling those apart, and well, hell, they cleaned up pretty good.
Yeah, I broke a couple of the pins in the cam lifters. So there's like a pin that sits over it and holds the washer down. I broke 2 of those, but thankfully the 305, same cam lifters.
I think the cam was in good shape. All the rods were in good shape. So we just bought a rebuild kit and put it all back together again, and voila.
That's the beating heart that is in our race machine now.
Oh man, that was so much work.
We probably spent probably 2 or 3 months rebuilding it and putting it back together again. And I think we were down to maybe, I think the race was in October, and we probably had it back together again in September.
So Kenny and Tom did, they tore it apart. Kenny broke, yes, I'm going to say Kenny broke. Kenny broke 3 pistons and, well, no, not 3. 2 were already broken. I think he broke at least 1. He broke at least 1 piston.
So, you know, there was the little incident where I put too much torque on one of the head bolts.
So right now I'm torquing this to 1,000,000 Kenny pounds.
And, well, broke a piece off of basically of the corner of the head.
What happened there?
Turn it off.
And trying to get that on camera, and then Kenny turns around. He's like, "Turn it off," because he knew he'd fucked up.
No. There was no backup plan.
He was using Kenny pounds when we were supposed to be using foot pounds. In my mind, I said, "Oh fuck."
The 305 was shot. The 350 was, I mean, it was it.
Because we just busted a kind of an important piece.
And that, I felt bad about that. I mean, you know, you can't help it. I mean, I was putting some Kenny torque on there, and you know, it was one of those things. It's like, you know, if I let the Kenny torque get out of control, I mean, you know, snapping head bolts, you know, you got bigger things to worry about than that. I mean,
well, first we just tried putting some more pieces of metal in there, more pieces of stuff in there to try to make it work, and we ended up having to re-weld the thing together. Have somebody else weld it. I didn't weld it. I'm not very good at welding, but somebody did. We have a winner with that 350 that we all worked on. We all came together.
We rebuilt that thing from scratch, so we all knew every part of that engine, and we knew that it was nothing in the engine was gonna cause us problems.